everyone, this is Ana from Savvy Cat Realty. I hope you have a great week so far. And today I'm here to talk to you about construction in Portugal. For those of you who don't know, Savvy Cat Realty is a relocation and investment agency that helps expats settle in Portugal. We work with all of continental Portugal, and we work with both rentals and buyers from a lifestyle perspective. So one of the things that we like to do is help figuring out which neighborhood or location is best for your specific lifestyle needs when moving to a different country, which is something that can be extremely overwhelming. And you know what can be even more overwhelming? Building in a different country. And building in Portugal in particular is no easy feat. And it is particularly complicated because the bureaucratic processes are, well, very bureaucratic and very slow. And unfortunately, the Portuguese public services aren't exactly known for being very efficient. So, I will walk you through what you can expect if you are looking to buy in Portugal and what can be the advantages and the disadvantages of choosing to do this. The first thing that you need to consider is time. How much time are you willing to spend? It's going to take a long time. It depends a lot from location to location, but overall you can expect a construction process in Portugal to take between 2 and 5 years. Yes, this is a very long time. So you really need to think about it thoroughly when you are considering these kinds of processes. It's very unlikely that the process will take less than 2 years. So the first thing that you of course need to do is find your plot for construction. If you already have a plot, then this is of course a step that you can skip. One of the most significant things when you are building is that where are you? Because town halls in Portugal, they can operate rather differently. Although of course the regulations are the same, the times of reply not so much. And usually in especially big cities or cities that are very active building, they tend to be very slow and they often have way more processes than they can handle, which makes things even slower. So one of the things that recently happened is that some measurements and some legislation was passed in order to simplify the licensing processes. And I really hope that this brings a positive change into the current scenario. However, I do think that this change will be very slow, and the town halls will take a while to adapt to the current measures, even though some of them are already in practice, or at least officially running. So, like I was saying, the first thing that you have to do when you are buying is get a plot, and then you need to get a topographer. So usually in all buying processes, in all construction processes, you need to get a topographer to verify the measurements of the plot or pre-existing ruin you have. If you are looking into taking advantage of something like the rural rehabilitation areas, the urban rehabilitation areas, then you do need to make sure that your plot is integrated into one. And usually it is only valid to take use of the urban rehabilitation areas if this is a pre-existing building or ruin. Ruins are eligible depending on the state of the ruin. So do take a look into that if this is something you are considering. It definitely can give some significant tax benefits, being the biggest one, a reduction of the VAT tax on construction from 23% to 11%. So this is a very significant reduction, and that makes a huge difference when you are planning a project. Do keep in mind that the urban rehabilitation areas do tend to be restricted to the bigger cities. So there aren't a lot of them on the smaller cities. There are sometimes rural development programs that you can look into, but they are far less abundant than the urban rehabilitation areas. Another thing that you need to know, and this video is of course talking about construction, but license is only required if you make a change to the usable area or the structural integrity and overall appearance of the building or house that you are going to be changing. The construction process does always require a license. So the first thing that you need to do after the topography is to get an architect. Sometimes it's even advantageous to get the architect before the topography, as they often have specific topographers that they work with, and it can be beneficial for the development of the project. The architect will give you a quote of how much his services is going to cost. This varies, of course, deeply on the architect, but a project can go anywhere between 20,000 and 100,000, depending on the size of the project and the complexity of the project. And of course, if it's something very small, it may be lower, but 20,000 is probably going to be the standard for, let's say, a villa or something like that. So that's also a cost that you need to consider. And then the initial development of the architecture project can be done mostly with the client involved, and should be done mostly with the client involved to make sure that it is aligned with the client's expectations. The biggest advantage of constructing is, of course, being able to customize everything to your own needs and tastes, so you get exactly what you want. It can also be significantly cheaper than buying something new, because usually, of course, you have the profit margin when you are selling something. The cost of materials have been fluctuating a lot, so they have tendentially going more expensive, but there have definitely been fluctuations. Overall, the current cost is higher than last year, but this, like I was saying, fluctuates. You should definitely get a quote from the architect on the expected cost of building of your desired project. Of course, this will be a loose quote on a range of values to expect for your particular needs, and it will, of course, drastically vary on the kind of finishings and the kind of work and the complexity of the work you want done. But it's always, of course, important to have an idea of how much you're going to expend to make sure that you are actually able to afford it. Another advantage of constructing is that you usually don't pay everything up front. You usually pay in installments as the process moves forward. So you first pay for the plot, then you pay for the architect. The architect services are often also split, like 50% up front and 50% when the project is finished is a common practice. Then you have to pay for the licensing costs, and then this is where things start to get slow, because licensing in townhouse can take anywhere between 3 months and 2 years. And it will, like I said in the start of this video, it will depend very drastically on the townhall. Usually the fast ones tend to be the smaller ones that don't have a lot of projects built up, and the slow ones tend to be on the more urban area. For example, the Lisbon area is known to be terrible, and I've had a lot of bad experiences with Porto too when it comes to delays. It is also to note that recently there have been a series of arrests for corruption in town halls in the north. So the north is particularly chaotic when it comes to licensing right now. And that's definitely a factor, but overall the Lisbon area has been chaotic for very many years by now, so it has been remarkably known as the slowest area to get anything done in Portugal for quite a while now. Do keep that in mind if you are looking into that area. So the first thing, once you have your overall project, and this is of course depending on the complexity of the project. If you are looking to get a villa, you can do a big part of the project before presenting it to town hall. However, if you are looking to do a big project like apartment complexes and a multi-building project, usually the first thing is the volumes. You need to get the volumetrics approved, and only after getting the volumetrics approved you move forward into the formal licensing. But this also depends on how the plot is integrated into the municipal planning zones. So there is a lot of complexity into the whole licensing process. This first phase is supposed to be quite quick, but town halls are known to be late quite often. So I personally have a project stuck on this phase for 2 years. So take that into account. And it's of course a very silly thing from a national development perspective to get developers stuck and for it to be so hard to actually develop in Portugal because of how hard and how slow it is to deal with town halls. So once you are done with this first phase, it's very much a back and forth communication. It can be quite spaced because of how long it can take to get meetings with the technicians at town hall. But overall, you present the solution and then they give you feedback on why they like or not like your solution, and you present the changes and so on and so forth until you actually get an approval. And then you can move into the next stage. So the licensing or simple processes, this first phase is the whole thing. For bigger projects, like I was saying, it can be divided into stages, getting the volumetrics and zoning, and then getting the architectures and specifics. And then the final phase is the specialty projects. That is another significant cost. They can be anywhere between 10 and 30k, maybe 5 on a smaller project, but they are also a fairly specific costs. You have to pay also the licensing fees. They are not that high. They do vary depending on the size of the work and also the value of the plot. They are not that bad. They are usually anywhere between 300 and 1500, but like I was saying, this does vary. And then the next, once you have everything approved, so the architectures and the specialities, then you have the final licensing for the construction. And in this phase, you also make another payment for the construction license. This is one of the things that has been changed. So one of the laws that was launched recently is that basically you will no longer have a formal license, and just the payment of the fee will be treated as a license, which I'm not sure how it will go, but hopefully it gets things done. And there definitely was delays on town hall actually delivering this licenses, I mean. So just using the payment proof as proof of the license can actually be a beneficial thing. We will see. One of the biggest risks of the current situation is that, like I was saying, one of the biggest problems is the delays. And one of the things that often happen on these kind of licensing projects is that town hall had 60 business days to reply to the submissions made, and they often would postpone with silly things, like they would give you a reply within these 60 days asking for a document or asking something minor that would just reset the time and get everything rolling again. So with these changes on the law, they are no longer allowed to do this, and there is a non-movable time frame for the licensing projects or the licensing replies from Town Hall, that if they are not complied by Town Hall, then something called the deferimento tácito happens. And the deferimento tácito is basically an automatic approval due to not keeping up their end of the deal on Town Hall. So basically not keeping up with the deadlines. This is, in theory, a great thing, because like I was saying, the whole licensing thing is very slow. But it does, of course, have some concerns, and those concerns are if the project actually have things that are technically illegal from a project, a municipal project standpoint, or even from a safety standpoint, then even though the licensing isn't automatically approved due to the current law, then the works can still be mandated to stop due to not complying with the law. So this is a risk of this new automatic approval system, but it is mostly on the hand of the submitter, so the person doing the construction, to be aware of the most of the rules and trying to comply with them. So if people are responsible, hopefully this shouldn't happen too much. I'm not sure people are responsible, so we will see. But either way, I think that this is overall a good thing. And to give you an idea of the new deadlines, they depend on the size of the construction and the plot to be licensed. If it is up to, I believe it's 300 square meters, it is the initial 60 business days that already existed. Then up to, I'm not sure of the values right now. I did mention this on another video, and they will show up here with the correct values, and if I don't remember or if I don't say them correctly, but I do believe that if it's up to about 500 square meters, then it's up to 120 business days. And then over 1,000 something square meters, it is up to 300 business days. 300 business days is a lot of time, but I think it's better to set these realistic time frames than to have these ridiculous situations of projects staying years to be licensed because Town Hall keeps postponing by asking minor documents. So overall, I think that the new system is positive. Once you reach this phase and you have everything licensed and you pay the construction license, you can start the actual construction. Of course, it is a good idea to actually find a trustworthy builder before you reach this stage. Part of the things we do in Savvy Cat is to help find trustworthy contacts. So the networking service is also part of our service. Also the project managing. So we will give you feedback and help you manage and improve your project, and also go to the town hall meetings, the architect meetings, and so on and so forth. And like I was saying, we also support with networking. So we do already have a fairly decent network of trustworthy professionals that we tend to use, but even in places or in specific requests where we don't have a pre-existing contact, we will look into it and we will screen people in order to present you with options that we think are viable. We do tend to present with at least 3 options, and we do try to offer options that we have direct feedback and observed actual work from. So If you are doing this on your own, you of course have to do all this on your own and find your own professionals. And this is of course very significant, and it's very important also to be very careful with the construction contract that you do. Always have a lawyer look into it, and do make specific deadlines written into the contract, and penalties and consequences for these deadlines not being upheld. This is of course optional from a construction perspective. The builder is not mandated to accept this contract, but as long as it is fair, they do accept the terms, and it does give you a lot more safety as there are consequences for delays and incorrect materials and so on. So do keep that in mind. Of course, when the construction starts, the first phase tends to be either demolition or excavation, and this is also tends to be the costlier phase. Usually the construction contracts tend to have split payments, and how many split payments will depend on the deal that you make with the contractor, but the most common is for between 3 and 10 payments specified on specific phases of the construction. So that is one of the advantage of building, is that it allows for a bigger spacing between payments and allows you to pay in installments, so to say, and you don't have just to pay the whole thing in one go. And overall, the construction process itself, there isn't a lot that can be done. In our service, we do include supervision, and by supervision it means that the agents go there to make sure that things are moving forward as they should, in the way that the things are actually being worked on, and keeping up with the agreed timelines. However, if you want a more detailed and technical overvision of the process, then you do need to contract a technical supervisor to go there, usually an engineer, and make a checkup on the works. The supervisor, I believe, should be with a frequency between once a week and once a month. This is depending on the type of construction you are doing and how much you are willing to pay, and how thoroughly or how frequent you want this inspection to be. So these are all costs to take into account. It will be something between 60 and 150 euros per visit, sometimes a bit more, but that will be the norm, I would say. And overall, hopefully the construction will move on smoothly. Things tend not to be super fast, and like I was saying, there are variation in the costs of materials, so the quotes can change, and good builders tend to try and have stock for their constructions to avoid that happening, but that also depends on their own available capital and the methods of paying you are doing. So if it's a small building and you are splitting into a lot of payments, there is likely going to be the risk of the material costs changing and you having to spend a bit more. So do take that into account in your planning. Overall, the time of construction depends a lot on the kind of works we will do, but I would say that for a new build from the ground, let's say a villa, it's probably going to be anywhere between 9 months to a year, depending on what you are doing. And then once everything is set up, you need to ask for the habitation license. Everything will be inspected by town hall. The specialty projects and the connections, the final connections to the networks, the water and electricity networks, need to be made by specific certified companies that have an added cost also. So they are not done by your builder, they are usually done by external companies. This often also causes delays. In big cities, this tends not to be a big problem as the connection points are readily available, but in more rural areas, there can be a significant costs for the extensions to connect from your property to the grid. So that's also something you should look into. The prices vary, and I've had this issue multiple times, so it's often hard for the builders to give you a quote as it depends a lot on the location. But overall, you can just try and find one of the certified companies for them to give you an estimate. It can be quite annoying that in Portugal, it's actually rather hard to get people to give you estimates when you don't have all the details. But if you insist a bit, they will give you a range. So that will often be what you work with in this kind of scenarios. So like I was saying, once all of this is done, the final phase is to get the habitation license. You often pay a hefty fee in this phase. It is according to the current evaluation of the property. And then everything is done and you can start getting the connections done and start moving your stuff or selling the property, whatever needs to be done. And that's overall how the construction process works. And wow, I'm here talking for almost half an hour. So this tells you how complex these processes are. And especially if you are coming from a different country, it is definitely advisable to get someone who knows what they're doing and of course who speaks your language, or at least English if you speak English, in order to walk you through and facilitate these processes. They can definitely be a huge headache and they tend to be very slow. So take all of that into consideration if you are considering building in Portugal. And I hope that all of this was helpful. I tried to be as thorough as I could, but maybe I missed something. I would love to hear your feedback. And I'm also open to comments and suggestions for future videos. Here we post videos every week talking about different topics that can be useful for people moving to Portugal, be it normal lifestyle and city things or technical things like, for example, building. If you do think that this is something that could be useful to you, feel free to reach out to us directly at www.savvycatrealty.com or contact@savvycatrealty.com. My assistant Katia will be the one getting back to you. You can also schedule clarification calls for free. However, if you want more technical advice tailored to your particular needs, you do have to go for advisory call that are paid and available also on our website for booking. I hope this was helpful. I would love to see your comments, and I hope to see you all next week.